couple of years. Now, while we were all busy battling COVID-19, government officials, including ministers and their deputies, were spending billions on food, entertainment and accommodation. A series of parliamentary questions has now revealed, let me reiterate this, over 1.4 billion rand was used by various departments in the last 3 years. Let's get reaction, joined by the DA's MP, Dr. Leon Schreiber. Dr. Schreiber, good morning to you. How did this even happen? If I recall correctly, and it wasn't too long ago, we all had to stay at home and not go out and not get entertainment. How did we get to 1.4 billion rand? Good morning.
Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, that's exactly what makes the story quite shocking, is the fact that we've seen a number of government departments actually spending, in the case of accommodation, 1.2 billion rand on accommodation over these last 3 years. And as you mentioned, it's kind of hard to understand this when so many of these accommodation facilities were closed down, when many of us were locked at home, how it was possible for government officials to travel and actually make use of these facilities to such an incredible extent during lockdown. So that is something that we'll be following up. What's really quite interesting is that there are a number of departments that really account for the bulk of this expenditure. So I think that's perhaps leading us towards an answer. So if you look at Minister Ronald Lamola's Department of Justice and Correctional Services, 293 million rand on accommodation, entertainment and catering during this period. Also, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu's Department of Human Settlements and Water Affairs, almost 250 million rand. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga, 149 million rand. And also Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, 149 million rand. Now, what's really striking about that last one is that we know our immigration system is in very, very serious trouble. And we know that Home Affairs effectively stopped working for a big chunk of the lockdown period over 2 years. And the fact that they were still able to spend this incredible amount on accommodation and catering and entertainment really boggles the mind. The same goes for the National Prosecuting Authority, that is in very deep trouble, one of them due to a lack of budget, and yet the Department of Justice is spending 293 million rand on accommodation and catering.
Did we get any, at least initial answers or clarification as to how these departments, some of which, Dr. Schreiber, you mentioned, really shouldn't have been that busy over the lockdown period? One could imagine the Department of Health maybe would have been very busy traveling around. Did we get any initial answers, at least any indication as to how it got to this point?
Well, my understanding is that some of the media actually approached government departments for comment before the weekend, and that was actually not provided. So we'll continue following up specifically through parliamentary committees. We've recently seen the example of the ESCOM, the SCOPA committee, where we do have some courageous officials like Ms. Busi Mavuso speaking out and speaking up for the truth. So we hope that we can get some answers through that channel. But I think what is really important to grasp here is the real extent of this. Just for some perspective, you know, we crunched the numbers on this, and for that same figure, 1.4 billion rand, we could have fed over 250,000 needy school children throughout their entire 12-year school career. And we know during lockdown that many of these school feeding schemes, in fact, in all provinces except the Western Cape, were actually shut down, and that there's been a huge impact on malnutrition. We've recently seen reports of children starving to death in the Eastern Cape. So this is a real crisis. And instead of feeding government officials who already earn enough to take care of themselves and their families, this money could have been used for that purpose. So it really emphasizes the extent of the expenditure that's been incurred, and that's where we will be following up in Parliament. What's also worth noting is that there are some government departments who certainly did not go on such a spending spree. And that's really a giveaway. The Department of Trade and Industry, a very big department, spent very little, I think 10,000 rand in total. So why is it that some departments didn't have this need, big departments like that? Even the Health Department, as you mentioned, spending significantly less than some of these government departments. What's wrong at the Department of Justice, Human Settlements? What's wrong at the Department of Home Affairs that causes them to incur these massive expenditures? That's where Parliament needs to step into this.
And Dr. Schreiber, last question to you, because I think you're 100% correct. Last question as well is off the back of the KZN flooding. For example, we're being told by government officials, I've done a number of interviews, we were told that we must trust the government, that the money is not going to be misused. misused and misappropriated. But then you get this kind of story, and it's going to make the trust in government from the South African public take another step back. COVID-19 was messy. This is now adding fuel to that fire. So how do we trust government with the KZN flood reliefs? I mean, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, just a few weeks ago, we also exposed how government ministers purchased new luxury vehicles during lockdown at a cost of 20 million rand as well. So there's a great deal of cynicism out there, and rightly so, about the government's intentions with these disaster relief funds. And I don't think there are many South Africans who would simply take the government at their word, saying, trust us, we will spend this wisely, because we know over years and certainly the last decade that we've seen that they're not good at their word when it comes to this. But the other thing that's also striking is, of course, that the Premier, Zihle Zikalala, has indicated that about 1.9 billion rand will be needed for flood relief. Now, let's watch closely whether that money actually reaches the people who need it, keeping in mind that there was no difficulty with getting 1.4 billion rand out to pay for catering and accommodation. And I think that really tells you something about the priorities of this poverty cabinet and the government at large. And so it is something for us to watch very closely, and the DA will certainly be playing our part in monitoring carefully what's happening on the ground.
Watch the money, follow the money trail. Dr. Leon Schreiber, DA MP, joining us as well. You should be furious about what we've just spoken about, considering how much of that money could have gone to COVID-19 relief funding. This could have just about covered the money that's needed for some part of the KZN flooding relief as well. My thanks to Dr. Leon Schreiber from the DA. Almost over 1.4 billion rand used by various departments for food, accommodation and entertainment in the middle of lockdown. How is that even possible, Tumza?